Hi guys, it's Mrs. Millison. Okay, let's do some algorithms using arrays. Okay, I'm just going to do probably 3 of them. And I'm going to create them all as methods. Okay, I've got 3 arrays here, 2 ints for years and months, and 1 string for a couple names. First method we're going to write is averaging all the array elements. So that way I can average all these years and I can average all these months. Okay, so it'll be static because I'm not attaching it to a object. Let's give it a return type of double, because if we're going to average something, we'll probably have a decimal, and I'll just call it average elements, pieces of the array. So what I'm going to need for that is I'm going to need an array. So I'm going to need an int array as my parameter, and I'm just going to call this nums. Okay, so whatever int array that I run this method off of, years or months, I'm just going to reference the array name nums inside of my method. Okay, so the first thing I have to do is I've got to go through the array and add up all the elements of nums. Okay, so let's go through the array. Now, all I have to do is look at each element in the array. So I'm going to use my for each loop. Okay. Okay, so remember, I can make up that variable name, but that has to be the array name. Okay, so this will just go through. This will do my starting at index 0, going all the way to the last index, and then what happens when I grab all those, I'm going to add them to a sum. So I need to create my sum first outside of the for loop, because then at the end, I'm going to return the sum divided by the number of elements, right? That there for a placeholder. Okay, so we're going to take sum and we're just going to add to it each element. Okay, so this should give me my total of all my elements. So 2 plus 5 plus 7 plus 2, so forth. Okay. All right, so when this finishes going through the loop, I'm going to have the total of all my numbers, so I'm going to have to divide by the number of elements. So how do I get the number of elements? I just take the length of nums. Oops. Okay. Now, these are both going to be ints, and I want to double, because if I have a number divided, undoubtedly my answer is going to be a double. So I'm going to cast just the sum as a double. So that'll turn the sum into a decimal, and then when I divide it by my integer, I'll still get a decimal. Okay, so this should do the trick. Let's compile. Okay, my messages are that I haven't used any of my variables. Okay, so let's run this method. So we'll run it off of years and months. So I'm going to do average elements. And the array that I'm going to put in the parameter will be the years array. We'll do the years one first. Okay, and then totally cheat and copy and paste. And then let's do the same thing with the months array. So it's, again, nice to do a method. That way I can average the elements of any int array. I don't have to sit there and write this code over and over again. Okay, now I have no idea what the average of these numbers are, so we're about to find out. Okay, so the average of my year numbers is 5.8, and the average of my months numbers is 3.87. Okay, let's change one. We'll change one of the numbers in years just to see if that 5.8 changes, so we feel like we're running it. Oh, there we go. It was a perfect 6.0. Okay. All right, let's do another method. Oh, whoops. Let's do another method where we're going to find the element with the maximum value. Okay, so let's think about, we're going to have to do this. We're going to have to set our maximum value at the beginning. Okay, maybe the first element. Let's say the first one's the maximum, and then we're just going to compare each element to the first element, and whichever one is higher, is greater, will become the max element. Okay, so we'll have to go through each element. So I want to try to clean up my space so you can see a lot here as I write the code. All right, so again, public static. What do we want to put here? I guess we want to return the element that is the maximum, so we'll have a return type of int. I could also probably return a string, like the max element is. Let's do that. Okay, so we'll call this max element. And again, I need my parameter, which is my array. Okay. So again, I'm going to need to set my max first. Okay. So I'm going to set it as, let me think. I'm going to set my index at 0. Okay. I'm thinking about this. So then I'll look at the first element, which is index 0, against the next one, which is 1. And then I'll do 1 against 2. No, I think I'm going to set the first index 0. I'm just going to compare every single one to it. Okay. So, and figure out which one is the greatest. Okay. So let's see. I need to loop through my elements. I'm not going to do a for each loop because I do want to see, I want to do a comparison. I want more control. Okay. Let's see. If I'm comparing index I, so let me write something down here. I'm going to say if num's index is, let's see, num index is less than num's I. So that would mean I is the new higher value. Then I'm going to set index to I. Okay. And then it'll do it again. The index will become like the second element, and then it'll compare, and then the index will become the third element, and so forth. And then over here, it won't change because that won't be greater than that. Okay, I'm just trying to think through it as I code it. Okay, so, whoops. I don't want to compare this to itself, so I'm going to start this one at 1. Okay. And then I has to be less than num's length. We want to go through all the items, all the elements, and of course we have to increment. Okay, so if, I think this will work. Okay, if not, then it'll just compare, it'll just stay 0, and it'll compare it to the next item. Okay, so it'll stay at this first index, and if this is not greater, so like come over here, if this is not greater, it'll stay right here. Okay, the index won't change. This should be good. Let me get some of my indent here. Don't need an else because I don't want anything else to happen. So at the end, I want to return statement largest, element is, and then I'm going to do num's index because that should house largest value, right? Okay, let me close this method. Oh, I had a double close there. Okay. All right, so let's run this max element. Max element, spell element right. And I'll do it on years. So we do know what should come out here. We should get 18 for years, and we should get 8 for months. Okay, so let's run both. each different int array. Okay, good. The largest element was 18, so it did work, and the largest element is 8. Okay, good. All right, good. See, I don't think I could have used my for each loop here because I wanted to start at the second element, okay? And when you use a for each loop, it's just going to go through all the elements. You don't, you lose a lot of level control. Here I got more control. Okay. All right, last one, we're going to count the number of a specific value. Okay, so we're going to create it for an int method or an int array, and then we're going to modify it for a string array. So we'll count like the number of 2s or the number of 5s or something like that. Okay. So again, I need to a signature in public static. I'm going to end up with a count. So let's make an int, okay, because it's going to come out with a number. Count value. And of course, I need an array as my parameter. I got to remember I closed my method. Okay, so same thing. I've got to initiate my count outside before I start looping through the array, and then at the end I'm going to return the count. Okay, and in the middle I've got to increment the account. So what I have to do is I have to increment it by basically if each array item. So if nums of each index. Whoops. Let me do my for loop. So I think I can do a for each because I'm just gonna look at each item. Yeah, this should work. Okay, so if this is equal to, oh, I need the target. Okay, so I'm going to put that up in my parameter. So what am I looking for? This is the value that I'm looking for. So I'm going to tell it the years array, and I'm going to look for the value 2. So if this is equal to target, then I'm just going to increase my count. Okay, and if it's not equal to target, then it won't increase the count. Okay. So I can't use this because I'm going to use element. Oops, because element is what's going to grab the value of each index item in the nums array or the array that I'm using in my method. Okay. All right, let me put some of my parentheses in here. That is indented way over. Okay, so then my for loop is done, and that should be it, right? I'm gonna set my count at 0, go through each element, and if an element is equal to the target that I'm looking for, I'm going to increase my count. If not, nothing will happen, and I'll go through the next element. So it'll increase my count, and then at the end, I'm going to return my count because that's what I want to know. Okay, and I think that'll close my method. Make sure I got all my parentheses. Okay, so let's come up. So again, when I do my count value method, I'm going to copy it up here. When I run my count value method, I need an array. So let's do years first. And I need a target. So let's count the number of 2s because there's 3 2s, right? And then, of course, let's print what we get because it returns an int. And I should get 3. There's 3 2s. I got 3 2s. Let's do it again and let's count the 5s because I have 2 5s. So if I just change the parameter to here to count the 5s, I should get 2 5s. Okay, 2 5s. And if I wanted to print a statement, I could have changed my output, my return type to an int. But I like a count. We end up with a count, then I can do something with it. I could put that inside a sentence. Okay, let's do it in months. Let's run it in months. We're going to do it in months array, and let's count the ones. because I know there's 2 ones, right, in the months array. There's my 2 ones. And then let's count the let's count the 6. There's only 1 6. This should come back as 1 because there's only 1 6. Yeah, there's only 1 6. Okay, let's do the same thing. Let's take this method and we're going to modify it for our string array. Okay, so it's essentially the same thing, but we don't want to have an int array. We want a string array. And of course, my target also has to be a string. I'm going to change the generic name of my parameter array for string to words. Okay, not nums. So let's see, the count's okay, element's okay, but then I have to reference the words array, okay, from my parameter. Element equals target's okay, count plus plus, and then return count. Okay. All right, what's this say? Cannot convert type. Oh, okay, I need to change that data type to string because each element's going to be a string. Good. Okay, so this should work. Still going to have my return type of my count, which is an int. So this should work for my string array. So now let's do the same count value with the names. Put that over a little bit. So now I'm going to do names, and of course let's do Sam because there's two of those. Okay, and again, I have 2 methods that have the same name, but the parameter values are different. Okay, the parameter specifications are a little different. This requires an int array and an int. This is a string array and a string. So I can have them the same name, and then I know, depending on what I put in here, if I put in a string array, I have to put in a string target. If I put in an int array, I have to put in an int target. Okay. Okay. How many? There should be 2 Sams, and then let's do one. Let's do one with a name that's in there. So we'll do Mark. Okay. Now this should come back as 1 because there's only 1 occurrence of Mark. Okay. Let's do a name that's not in there. Let's do Jill. Okay. Now Jill's not in there, so it should come back 0 because that count should have never changed. Yeah, it'll come back 0 because Jill doesn't exist in there. Okay. Oops. Okay, so count stayed at 0. It never incremented up. So it started at 0 and I returned to 0 because Jill doesn't occur in the array. Okay, so there's just a couple different algorithms. Okay, so you got to figure out if you can use the for each loop if you just want to quickly go through all of your elements. Okay, so I did use them a couple times. I just need to run through them all. In the second one, I couldn't use my for each because I needed to modify my for loop a little bit. I didn't start at the first element. I started at the next one over. Okay. And then if we need to have some sort of comparison, and again, if you're going to build a value to work with, you've got to declare it outside the loop and then return it outside the loop. Okay. And then you modify it or build it inside the loop as you go through each element. Okay. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you all next time.